Hi, this is Kevin for Passion for the Word. We are now finally going to finish our study on the Sermon on the Mount. Now, this passage here, the first 3 verses are actually covered in a video I did called The Most Terrifying Passage, and I've used these verses in many videos. I'll have my wife put a link to that video at the tail end of this one. We'll start by reading through the whole, we're going to read all the way to the end, because I'm not going to go into the full details, because I've got a video that I go deep into Matthew 7:21 through 23. So we're going to take them a little bit lighter, and then the verses that follow that, mainly trying to finish up the Sermon on the Mount. We'll put the link to the other one, or to the other video. Starting in verse 21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Right there, the most terrifying thing you can hear. Most terrifying passage in the whole Bible. Continuing, verse 24. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the wind blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And everyone that heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. And then the response to the sermon, verses 28 and 29, and it came to pass when Jesus had ended these sayings, the people were astonished at his doctrine, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Okay, so backing up. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father. Not everyone that says, Lord, Lord, is going to make it in. Words alone don't do it. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? But they're for themselves. They're not doing God's work. How do I know that? Because if you read the tail end of verse 21, not everyone, well, read the whole thing. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. But, now that's the way this is reading, some people have a problem with this in the King James. They're saying not everyone's going to do it, but the one that he's saying the but about is the ones that will enter heaven. And it says, he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. So if you're doing God's will, you'll be going into heaven. If you're not, you won't. The only way to know, you can't take my word for it. I could be wrong. You have to know the scriptures for yourself. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not? And look at the things that they've prophesied in his name. They've cast out devils, and they've done many wonderful works. Now, one thing about many will say to me in that day. If you remember in the last video, where we're covering verses 7, 13, and 14. And I'll read those over to you. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Verse 13, where it says many, that's the majority. I don't think there's any question about it. And verse 14, when it says few, that's a minority. Well, here where it says, many will say to me in that day, we're not even 10 verses later. And in the Greek, it's the exact same. We got the same word many, and in the Greek, it's the exact same word. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. I don't see how that can't still be the majority. It's obviously majority just a few verses earlier. Here, I think that Jesus is warning that the majority of people that think they're saved aren't. And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Now, iniquity is a word that we don't use much outside the Bible, but it basically means lawlessness. If people are accusing you of being legalistic because you're adhering to the Bible, you're obeying what God said. They are risking being part of the many, being of those that are going to hear, "Depart from me, ye that work lawlessness." You don't want to be that. You don't want to hear that. You want to be in the group that's doing God's will, that's adhering to the scriptures. Don't be afraid of adhering to them. If you're reading all of them, don't be afraid of being too strict with them. Therefore, now we're on to verse 24. And I always say, whenever you come across the word therefore, stop and find out what it's there for. It's a link between what you're about to read and what you just read. We're not going to go over what we just read, but I always suggest doing that normally. Because of what we just read, verses 21 through 23, therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them. Hearing isn't enough. You have to do them. You have to do what he says. You can't just hear it. You can't just know it. Whoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. I don't know about you, but I want Jesus to consider me a wise man. I don't. That's as great of a goal as Acts 17:11, wanting to be a noble according to the Bible. Because when the rain descends and the floods come and the winds blow and beat upon that house, it will not fall because it's founded on a rock, the rock of Jesus. Every time you come across a rock, it's almost always referring to Jesus. And everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. So if you're hearing this and you're not putting it into practice, you're foolish. Now, as much as I want Jesus to consider me, by his definition, a wise man, I even more so do not want Jesus to consider me foolish by his terms, by the terms laid down here. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Putting the teachings of Jesus into practice, not just reading them, not just knowing them, actually putting them into use in your life is what it's really all about. And it came to pass when Jesus had ended these sayings, the people were astonished at his doctrine, for he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. And what they're meaning there by having authority, he wasn't saying, so-and-so said this. He's saying, he's claiming it. He's speaking it himself. Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount. Three of my favorite chapters in the entire Bible. Right up there, Romans 8 would be the other favorite chapter of mine. If Jesus were to preach a sermon, this is what it's going to sound like. If he came to your church to preach a sermon, this may very well be what he does, because that is one of his sermons. I believe it was the first recorded sermon, but I wouldn't swear to that right at this moment. But I believe it was his first recorded sermon. That's all I have for you. I've got nothing else in my notes, so thank you and God bless.